Hello and welcome to the Fire Chief's video message for May 2019. Spring's upon us. We're getting ready to jump into the summertime, and joining me this month is Pete Perringer. Pete, thank you for being here.
Chief, we're taking the May out of maybe.
Out of maybe?
That's right.
You're going to also get into the summer of safety and some of those initiatives.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yep, busy time.
So one of the things that was very exciting yesterday to some stations was that email that Fleet put out about the new engines. It's pretty interesting, pretty exciting. 23 engines being built. Engine 712's been here for a couple months now. Quite happy about it. And that listing of new engines and who's getting them came out yesterday. Did you notice that?
Yeah, and of course, engine 712's been here for a while. We've kicked the tires, and they're making some adjustments apparently. But yeah, it's very exciting. Of course, we've gotten a lot of new apparatus, here and there recently. But this engine's starting to really come in now. It's pretty exciting.
Yep. So the end of this month, May 27th, they're going out to inspect the next three, which are engine 31, 26, and 18.
Right.
And then the second week of June, the week of June 10th, they're going out to take care of 29, 25, 33, 26, and 16. And then the next grouping thereafter is going to be identified. But that email yesterday outlined all but one of the 23, and that listing is here on the screen. As you see, these units are who's identified in there. And Chief Friedman talked about this back in the January meetings, officers meeting and line officers meetings, that the criteria for selection was going to vary based upon a bunch of different factors. And the 23rd unit, the last unit, is to be determined still. There's about 6 or 7 places that will not be getting one of the Pierces. So this is the current list, and with these being identified, it's tied to the production schedule, tied to interfacing with Pierce, so that Pierce has that built into their information for graphics and the components of the build. So this is the sequence that they're planning to come in, and again through July and August will be the other inspection trips for these rigs. So as we roll into the end of summer, these rigs will be rolling into service and moving on. And
as you know, we have a great reserve fleet. They're utilized every day. And as you previously discussed with Chief Friedman, that there is a strategy, a tactic to replacement, and it's not just mileage necessarily. How busy a station is, there's a lot of criteria that goes into it. So it's a good plan, and very excited. I know the folks out in the field are really looking forward to getting going with it. So.
Right, and clearly the fact that with about 50 frontline engine companies, 35 frontline and 22, 23 reserves, about 20 engines are in some type of maintenance status a day, and that's where the large volume of support comes. So this 24 engines will be a big breath of infusion on the fleet side.
A little sidebar is interesting to me anyway, is that when we put 712 in service and we talked about some of the appliances, particularly the 1.5-inch hose, I was flooded with calls like, what's the story on the 1.5-inch hose? And of course, we've been talking about and researched the nozzles and the hose, type of hose, and so forth. So it's not only the engines, it's a couple of things that go along with it. So I think it's a game changer for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a part of education is another great opportunity that's happening tomorrow. As we are rolling into a new term, a new group of legislatures in the county, the state. There's a great opportunity, a great collaboration between Prince George's County Fire, Montgomery County Fire, the respective 1619 and 1664 IAFF locals, and the state professional firefighters. Is we're having Fire Ops 101 tomorrow. at MIFRE. Can you tell us about Fire Ops 101?
And I don't know if you mentioned Annapolis too, they're also involved. So this has been or some version of this has been in place for decades, but to educate our legislators and elected officials and to some degree the media as well. But lately, the IAFF International does this across the country. This month we're able to do it in conjunction with MIFRE and those other agencies you mentioned. So there's been, I think, 7 or 8 folks from Montgomery County, of course, legislators from the state of Maryland and the respective counties and organizations are going to participate. And basically, it's a firefighter for a day.
Right.
It's very comprehensive, very there's just they go through all the motions.
Right. They go through a CPR
yeah.
scenario, an EMS scenario,
Yeah.
a live fire observation, and a vehicle extrication scenario, teamed up in groups of about 8 to 10 as a group, and go through those scenarios, wearing gear, being exposed to, as well as I'm not going to use the phrase confined space, but we would call it a maze. They would call it a confined space.
They call it all kinds of things.
Exactly. So it's clearly an opportunity for the folks that are our supporters to understand our work environment, to understand the challenges that we're incurring on the daily basis, and to get more of an appreciation. So it's something that like I said, we worked since the fall in collaboration to schedule and to get a placeholder, and we have plans to do another one here locally with folks probably in the September timeframe. But it's a great opportunity, and as I've said before, we're engaging with department heads as they're named and coming on board, and the new council members to show them and to explain to them the MCFRS and the fire service. And we are looking forward to having a couple sessions here upcoming with our Montgomery County state delegates, having them in the stations and explaining that to them.
Right, and as we all know, there's a new administration in place, and it is a great opportunity to kind of show them
Yep.
how to pull up the boots and so forth. So.
And one of the things that is not on schedule for the Fire Ops 101 is something that Mr. Hucker and County Council folks talked about when we met with them a couple weeks ago, is the hear us, see us, and clear for us. And we were on 270 this morning with a truck fire that caused a significant delay for a period of time. The reality is that is one of our most dangerous interactions, and it's one that in the fire service in broad sense we repetitively, week after week, see stories of apparatus struck while blocking. The law obviously was changed recently to expand from just emergency services to all vehicles, yellow light vehicles, construction or road crews, and give us that extra lane. So as guys and gals go out there, make sure they're taking that extra effort, making sure they're taking that extra attention and doing the steps necessary to provide that blocking, to provide that buffer zone, as well as early identification and warning to the motorist, because the most important part is to try to give them that time to slow down, give them that time to merge away from our operational area, and then our functions of having a blocking and buffer and barrier capabilities to prevent what may happen from being impactful to the victims and the responders. Apparatus can be repaired. Apparatus can be replaced. Responders and personnel much more impacted when they're struck, on a highway or on a roadway incident.
Well, it certainly is going to take a collective effort of the motorists, the pedestrians, and certainly emergency services. But hear us. So typically people are going to hear sirens and hear commotion and so forth. Then they're going to see us, hopefully in our rearview mirrors or coming from the side streets, and then we need them to clear for us. Right. Hear us, see us, clear for us. And this is a region-wide effort, but we've been talking about this for a number of years, and obviously we have, as you mentioned, we take a number of considerations in place when we go out on the scene, and it is very dangerous out there.
And one of the most impactful parts there is when we get the reporters that do ride with us and do get to see it from our point of view and perspective when they're in the rig, going to a call and seeing what we see on a daily basis. and get that different perspective. It helps them be able to try to educate the rest of the community about the challenges that fire apparatus operators are facing.
So as you mentioned, and we are going to be rolling out and getting the media engaged, engaging our community partners, talking about know what to do when approached by or approaching emergency vehicles.
Yep. As a pivot and a closure of a pretty significant event, a couple weeks ago we had the court actions wrapped up on a very significant fire, sadly a fatal fire, the September 10th, 2017 event on Danbury Street in Station 20's area. I want to highlight the amazing work done by fire investigations, the amazing work done by the crews there on that day. What did you notice? What did you identify when you were there those days, and then the follow-on that made that so unique and so challenging for our folks?
Well, the day of the event, actually, Chief Ogren was filling in for me, so thank goodness. But if most of us know, that was a very challenging event. It was a house fire. You mentioned the fatal. As it turns out, there was potentially hazardous materials, tunnels. It was very complicated on many levels, and of course, law enforcement and state's attorney involvement, proceeded after that. So very complicated, but it was a house fire, and lots of hazards involved, and the house has been condemned and so on and so forth. So there has been the court action, but going on 2 years worth of action and questions and media involvement. In fact, a local reporter lives next door, and of course everybody's been very involved with the ongoing process.
Right. So I mean, it's a very small house, as this picture shows, original to the neighborhood. It had a heavy load of occupant possessions. I'm going to use the word clutter. You're going to start hearing that more and more. Hoarding is actually a psychological, medical condition. It is not the correct term to utilize. So this house was full. In the classifications of clutter, this would definitely have been a heavy clutter circumstance where there was very small paths, there was very limited access. But this small house was full of possessions, as well as everything else under the sun. But there was a significant fire that started in the basement and then did spread up and got into knee walls and had the regular challenges of this type of construction. But the fact was, the fire was pretty rapidly taken care of. The fatality was identified, and then the long-term investigative process endured. And the crews that came back day after day to assist with the moving all of the clutter from one room to another room as they did a dig throughout the entire property was a big challenge. There is clearly, as the case has identified and the state's attorney's reporting provided, there were the tunnels underneath the house. And the folks from investigations, as well as those that supported that, did the entry into those tunnels and did the documentation of those, definitely deserve additional recognition and credit. So from the Fire Investigations Unit, retired Lieutenant Maxwell, Dan, Lieutenant Aaron Worth, and Master Firefighter Boyd, as well as everybody else in that unit were phenomenal in how they worked to document, worked to investigate, and then provided the information in conjunction with the detective in charge and John McCarthy in his office. So very much kudos to all of those involved on that significant day, because we were there for 4 or 5 days engaging with that to work through that origin and cause of examination of that entire house.
And as we know, as you know, and state's attorney has said, that documentation and that work by our investigators was key to some of their obviously evidence, but was key to their case.
Right. So again, great work done by those folks that day, as they do every day, but wanted to recognize those few folks. as we're processing through building construction, one of the things that's in the midst of renovation right now is Station 25. So that's it's about a 2-year-long process, and my hats goes off to all the folks at 25 because they're definitely in the midst of that construction process. When you went out there recently, what did you notice?
Well, yeah, hats off to those guys and gals for sure. But there's a lot of they have to make a lot of accommodations to be able to continue to provide that service from that location. So, that it's a huge project. It's a big building in the first place, big fire station in the first place, but it's going to get a lot bigger.
Exactly.
It's a special operations location, so there's future plans for
right. I mean, as these
some of
pictures
those accommodations.
As these pictures articulate, it's a 2-bay addition on what we would identify as side B, and then 13,000 square feet of new firehouse to the back of the bunk room as well as to the front of the current office spaces. And that 2-bay addition is pretty much under roof soon, and they were supposed to be into the trailers or into moving out of phase 1 into phase 2 by July. That's a little bit pushing the timeline. It may be a little bit later than that. And then once we transition to that, and when I use the word trailers, the trailers will be parked behind the ladder truck bay and behind the back bays, and that'll be the sleeping quarters. The day-to-day living space will be in the 2 new bays. They're going to build out office spaces and living spaces there while they do the entire renovation of the current station. So big project, going to be a little bit more than a minute before that's finished, but clearly a opportunity for much needed space as well as a much needed opportunity for more services there at 25.
Yeah, and you mentioned the trailers. That's what we call them, but they're module units, and obviously I think they'll be very comfortable, and that's going to have to serve them for a little while as that project continues. What's the? Do we have the projected date on that?
So again, the trailers were supposed to be July. That's sliding a little bit, and it's all going to be weather dependent. If they really get a good kick into the other additions and getting those under cover before the winter hits and bad weather becomes a predominant issue, then we could be the latter part of summer next year when it's all close to wrapped up. But they did have some challenges this spring with getting the new bays under cover because of the weather and activity. So that's naturally a challenge within the construction world. And then 35 building, or the permanent station 35 is just sewer, I believe, is done from my last update, and the building will be beginning shortly, I think at the beginning of the physical year. So that's the next step, and that's where we see our next opportunity for new fire station construction.
And that's, of course, is exciting. We've been talking about that for years, and as you said, they have had some infrastructure work to do there, but obviously we have a site, and that's going to be good for the folks of Clarksburg and surrounding area.
Yep. So as we roll into spring, as we engage with our outreach activities, what do you see on the horizon for the key points in engaging with the community in our topics?
Yeah, well, we always talk about, or always try to take the opportunity to talk about smoke alarms. Our senior outreach folks are continuing to be engaged in the community there. But this time of year, it's spring cleaning. You got Memorial Day coming up. It's the swimming season. Swimming pools open. Mm-hmm. You have Potomac River and everything that goes along with that. So we typically will try to get out some safety messages there for Great Falls Park and the surrounding area. Of course, the cooking on the grill and those types of things too. So a lot to talk about.
So July 1 turns the clock on the CO alarm legislation, and how we've talked about that here before, and how that'll kick into place. As well as we recently had a great opportunity. Councilmember Rice was riding along with Company 22, got a great opportunity to go out when a citizen called the firehouse and asked for assistance with a defective smoke alarm, and how indeed that was hard to reach but outdated, and that was a great opportunity for, again, one of our elected officials to engage and see, how the circumstances and how the situations provide us the opportunity to ensure they have that safety tool, have that early detection and smoke alarms in their house.
Yeah, and we continue to, the crews every day, I think, are noticing smoke alarms that need to be replaced or installed, and we just kind of do that. But I think over the years, it's been pretty significant impact that we've had. And, we've kind of talked about it, but early in my career, you'd have a fatal fire, and inevitably the people had no smoke alarm or it didn't work. And that continued for years and years, decades. But lately the trend seems to be smoke alarms work, people get out. And, and I think that has a lot to do with where the rubber meets the road, and the troops have been out there, but also the community taking that positive action. And, the codes and building codes and so forth, where in Montgomery County we're quite advanced as far as sprinklers and smoke alarms, and now carbon monoxide.
Yep. So good deal as we are rolling into that summer time frame. The weather's definitely helping us, giving us longer days and more sunlight. Those that are pollen impacted or allergy impacted are absolutely in misery, because it's been pretty crazy with the pollen dust and that. But it's always the opportunity to get out there and engage basic training, area familiarization. There was a big event the other day on Bell Nursery up in Burtonsville's area, and a dry hydrant or an on-site water supply was engaged and very key to the operation, and the company knew that. The company had that in their back pocket, knew that situation because of area familiarization. So everybody definitely get out there and engage with those activities to be ready for that call at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning. So again, as we wrap up the May video, want to make sure everybody's taking care of the basics, but take care of yourself. We're getting ready to roll into the hazy, hot period of time, and you have to come to work ready, come to your standby ready. That's talking about hydration. It says nourishment and hydration, critically important. Megan's been sitting here before with me, talking about that proper level and when to have that coffee and how much, or what that caffeine source is. It's critical so that you're ready to go, because you never know when the station alerting goes off, what that circumstance may be. So till next month, when I hope to have a discussion about the new leaving hospital button, as well as statusing with EMS units. Take care and be safe.